Today we're going to be making this amazing rustic tomato galette with an olive oil crust, which looks and sounds pretty fancy, but galettes are actually really easy to make. In fact, if you've never made a pie before and you're wanting to learn how, a galette is probably going to be your best stepping stone. This savory galette is perfect to serve up for a light meal or to take to a potluck or a brunch. And the really great thing about the crust is you can fill it with all kinds of different savory fillings. So without saying any more, let's make a rustic tomato galette. For the crust, you're going to need 1.5 cups of flour, and I'm going to add half a teaspoon of salt. Next goes in a 1/4 cup of olive oil, and I'm going to start off with 2 tablespoons of water. Mix that together until it forms a nice soft dough. You might need another tablespoon or 2 more of water, depending on your flour. Your flour is very likely going to be different from mine. So if you need a little bit more water, sprinkle some more in, and eventually you'll want to abandon that spatula and get in there with your hands, because that's how you're really going to know if your dough needs more water or not. Basically, when the dough comes together and you can clean the sides of the bowl with it, that means you've added enough water. There's a good liquid to flour ratio there. And because this dough has quite a bit of oil in it, it's going to be very easy to handle. And that's pretty much all there is to making this dough. I'm going to wrap it really tightly in this plastic, and we have to let it rest in the fridge for 30 minutes to hydrate. And if you wrap it really tightly like this, it's going to hydrate a lot better. And as I mentioned earlier, this dough can be made for any type of savory galette you want to make, so save the recipe. Into the fridge that goes for 30 minutes, and now we're going to look at our beautiful tomatoes. These are heirloom tomatoes my sister grew in her garden, and she was so kind to give them to me. There's all kinds of different colors and shapes, these beautiful cherry tomatoes. I don't know the names of any of these tomatoes, but I can tell you they taste pretty phenomenal, and they're perfect in this galette. You want to make slices that are about 1/4 inch thick. And you can use any type of tomato for this recipe. You don't have to use heirlooms. I've done this with nothing but Roma tomatoes. If you only have cherry tomatoes, those will work great. It's a pretty flexible recipe. This one here looks just like a fig, but the one I'm really mesmerized by is this one here with the purple skin and the green interior. I have no idea what this tomato is called, so if you know the name of this variety of tomato, please let me know in the comments. If you're using cherry tomatoes, just cut those in half. So altogether, you're going to need about 400 grams of tomatoes, and that's about 3 to 4 medium. So now I'm going to sprinkle some salt over the tomato slices and toss them gently just by hand so that they get coated well. Now we're going to transfer our tomato slices into a colander. So go ahead and dump those in there, and now place the colander inside the bowl. We're going to let this sit for 30 minutes, and that salt is going to help draw out a lot of the excess moisture in those tomatoes. And 30 minutes is perfect timing because that's when our dough is going to be ready. So onto a piece of parchment paper that's very important, roll out your dough into a 14-inch circle. And this does not have to be perfect. So no need to break out your inner Michelangelo. Though I bet you Michelangelo would have really dug one of these galettes. And if he was my neighbor, I would most certainly make him one. And if you want to make one of these galettes and you can't find the recipe, I always place the recipe link in the description underneath the video. So now just slide the dough directly with the parchment paper onto a baking sheet, and right about now you're going to want to preheat your oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Now here are my tomatoes. This is what they look like after 30 minutes. You're going to notice that a good amount of water will have come out of those tomatoes, and this is just going to make our galette soggy. So it's of no use to us. I'm just going to pitch that and then dump the tomatoes right back into the same bowl. Now we're going to add just a few more ingredients, starting with a couple of cloves of garlic. You can chop it if you like, but I like to slice it very thinly for this galette. How you chop your food can often affect how it tastes, so I want little bursts of roasted garlic in here. Slicing it, I think, is the best way to achieve that. Now I'm going to add some thinly sliced red onion. Don't go overboard with the red onion. I may have added a little bit too many. This really is one of those recipes where you can eyeball a lot of the ingredients, so don't take it too seriously. Now I'm going to add in some fresh herbs. Here I have some beautiful rosemary and purple basil. I also have some lovely fresh oregano. If you only have 1 or 2 of these 3 herbs, then don't sweat it, just put those in there. And if you're using dry herbs, use considerably less, like maybe about 1/3 of this amount. And when you're chopping fresh herbs, don't make them too fine. Leave them a little bit choppy so people can see what they're eating. So add that on in there along with some freshly cracked black pepper, a little drizzle of olive oil, and I don't think I'm going to add any more salt to this. The teaspoon that we added earlier was just enough to season all of this. So go ahead and just toss this gently by hand, that way you won't ruin your tomato slices. And now we're going to take our pastry and sprinkle a little bit of cheese in the middle. You want to leave a good 2-inch border all the way around. This is a mixture of cheddar and mozzarella, but basically any firm cheese works for this. Now I'm going to arrange the tomato slices on top of the cheese. That cheese is not only there for flavor, it's also acting as a barrier to prevent our crust from getting soggy, so it's very important to have it there. And again, experiment with whatever cheeses you want, because this tomato galette is your masterpiece. By the way, if you're enjoying this video and you're getting something good out of it, then let me know by hitting that like button. It helps out the channel so much. Every minute you spend watching these videos means a lot, so thank you. Now if I could go back and redo this galette, I would have put the onions after the cheese and then put the tomatoes on. So many recipes say to just mix everything together, but because I'm using heirloom tomatoes, I feel like they deserved a little bit more attention. By the way, if you have any leftover juice in the bowl, just throw it away. Now you want to start folding the edge of your pastry about 1 inch over the filling. Try not to make any cracks here. If you try and get a good pleat on each fold, then you're going to further your chances of keeping everything in while it bakes. This is really effortless to do, and it's almost impossible to mess it up. Yet at the same time, you're probably going to feel so cool right about now. If you want to, you can sprinkle the top with more cheese. This is totally optional. This is another step I'd probably leave out if I wanted to show off my tomatoes. One thing cheese on top does add is incredible texture. Now give this a generous lashing of egg wash. This is just an egg that I beat. You can add a little water to it if you want. Egg wash makes a huge difference. It really helps make the crust nice and brown. Now we're going to fire this into our preheated oven and let it bake for 35 to 40 minutes. Or until it's this gorgeous golden brown and it's bubbling away like a little volcano. You have to let this rest for about 10 minutes before you cut into it, because right now everything would pretty much just spill out. But look at how beautiful and golden that crust is, and the cheese on top is nice and brown and crunchy. And the flavors of the garlic with the fresh herbs makes this so mouthwatering. Serve this up to your guests at your next dinner party and you're gonna be famous. So as you can see, after a 10-minute rest, this is very easy to handle. So I'm just gonna place this right on the rack and maybe top it off with a fresh sprig of oregano. That's really all you need to turn this into a showstopper. And it slices very cleanly, especially after a rest. Imagine serving one of these up at your next tea party instead of your usual scones and little sandwiches. And even though I'm not a dietitian, I'm pretty sure this is quite healthy. They're always raving about the health benefits of olive oil. And this galette has quite a bit of olive oil in it. Look at how beautifully that holds up. And the crust underneath is perfectly cooked and golden and crisp. When you're checking your galette, check the bottom crust first, because that's the most important part that needs to get well cooked. Now as for the flavor of this galette, we're gonna taste it right now. And I'm gonna say it's probably a cross between a really great pizza and a pie. That crust is out of this world. And you saw how easy it was to make, so go try out this tomato galette today, and as always, let me know how it worked out for you.